Greetings this fine Sunday morning. Curiosity killed the cat, they say, but satisfaction brought it back. That old saying tells us that while curiosity may harm you, the satisfaction of finding knowledge of the truth is worth it. So be curious, strive to find the truth and gain knowledge. I suspect that everyone, at some level, is curious about their religion, their faith, and what it is that they actually believe, because there's a great deal to be curious about. Religions have prospered, dominated, and disappeared. Where are the gods of Greece, the pantheon of Rome, the powers of the Druids, those who inspired the Easter Islanders, the footnotes of history found in minute figure carvings and in paintings on the walls of the homes of cavemen, or in the yet-to-be-deciphered languages of other times? How do we understand creation? Is it as the scientists tell us? Is it as Genesis records? Are the stories compatible or diametrically opposed? And ultimately, does anyone know? What will new discoveries, new theories be as humankind reaches out into space? How was God created? Or is there a God? Or are there as many gods as the many religions decree? What was there before there was anything or any power? Where did it all come from? Where did the elements come from that created the day and the night of the world of Genesis? And what is the source of the properties that produced the Big Bang? How do we read the Bible? As a history book? Or as stories that lead us to truth and understanding? Why so many denominations and creeds and beliefs if there is only one God? Why is everything so complicated? And the more you pursue your questions, the greater the confusion, the more questions. Well, where do we get the answers? From theologians, our own minister, from the bishops, the Bible, and which translation and how to read it? And why do we do the things we do in church? Sitting or standing, chanting or contemplating, married or celibate clergy, praying or singing, gloriously colored windows, or plain and unadorned. All the colors of the rainbow in painstakingly embroidered stoles and chasubles, or in the anonymity of black and white. Proclaiming or testifying. And why do so many churches do things so differently? Why isn't religion simple? Why isn't believing easy? Why do answers only generate more questions? Where's the certainty that makes for satisfaction? Well, ultimately, we each find answers that satisfy us as individuals, or we lose interest in the question. I am confident that when I find answers that work for me, they might not work for my bishop, but for now, they work for me. But our differences explain how so many different interpretations of God and faith have come into being. And those different perspectives seem to grow with each generation. So many of our questions are answered by the simple reality that humankind has free will, but has never really mastered it. The result? Throughout all the ages, we've continued to mess up the plans of the Lord. That reality is reflected in the story of the rebellion of Eve and Adam in Eden. We're told that given everything one could ever ask for or need, at the first opportunity, they succumbed and yielded to temptation and their own convoluted logic. It wasn't that the serpent actually lied. Adam and Eve did not die from eating the fruit as God had warned, but they did lose their innocence and became aware of good and evil. And in their disobedience, they lost their idyllic home where they walked with God. The story explains in a way that unsophisticated folk could understand how we traded the peace, comfort, and innocence that we shared with all the other animals and became responsible for our own decisions. Far easier to comprehend than the explanations of evolution, which tells the same story, just over a far greater time period for each of those 7 days. The ability to make decisions, whether based on good or bad, or greed or benevolence, is the result. But so many things combine to make a decision. One's perspective, one's needs, one's environment, one's history, one's friends and foes, And as the centuries pass and the four corners of the world are populated, the interpretations and the understandings and the desires and needs multiply and factor into our decision making, for better or for worse. So how does a singular God come to be seen in so many guises? For a start, just look at the paintings of Europeans as they portray Jesus. He's a white, attractively proportioned, blue-eyed, fair-haired man. And yet we know he was a Semite, meaning an olive or dark skin and dark eyes. From Africa, we see portraits of Jesus from the Ethiopian places of worship, where he's black and his beard and hair are clearly of that continent. From the Far East, his eyes and skin reflect those of that geography. Clearly, no picture of Jesus has survived from the time he walked the earth. And no artist since then set out to deceive in their artwork. They just portrayed the vision that spoke to their artistry as they tried to record his features. And just as differing countries and continents found different images, so too did time and artistic mediums change our understanding. Surely no one now believes that God is an old bearded man with a graying mane who floats about on a cloud wearing a nightshirt. Yet that's how he was portrayed over and over again, in lieu of any artist's ability to portray the one whose visage is beyond humanity's ability to view. It's our differing needs and experience that color our understanding of God. For instance, if your heritage allocates jobs as being those for the female and those for the male, and the men get to wear the crowns, it is easy to attribute the pronoun he to God. After all, you do want your God to be an all-powerful God. The all-powerful God. And then there's the recording of history and the events of the day. Just check out your diary with that of a member of the opposite sex when you attended the same event. Different stories are found noteworthy on the same occasion. The reality is that men tended to be the scribes and authors tend to write about what interests them. Their records record their perspective and priorities and add color to the content of their writings, including the Bible. Just as we condemn decisions of the past, we also condemn their justice systems. We find it impossible to judge people with the standards of another time that approved slavery or stoned or drowned or burnt people at the stake, regardless of the level of their crimes or misdeeds. Similarly, it's impossible to understand a God whose objectives run contrary to one's beliefs, right or wrong. And right and wrong can be very different from country to country, religion to religion, neighbor to neighbor. It bothers me that I see the impact of a burqa as dehumanizing, but I acknowledge that those wearing them believe they are obeying God's law and honoring their faith. I shudder that anyone would pray, "Thank God for not making me a woman," but accept their right to their prayers. And so we end up with differing perspectives that divide humanity rather than unite us. And that happens when what we believe is right is seen by others as wrong, and, of course, vice versa. What is needed is being able to love and respect, to talk, reason, and debate among peoples and nations and faiths, and trusting that someday we can come to understand the objectives and live the lives that were forsaken as humanity gained the ability to reason and decide and make mistakes as well as to choose wisely. Questions heaped upon questions. And surely, if there is anything that history and the Bible agree upon, it's that we are not always right, that we can act against our own best interests. But despite our erring and failing, the world continues. We are given another chance, and another, stretching on into infinity, or wherever it may be, that accord and peace become the choice of all. In another place and time, it was far easier, indeed quite satisfying, to accept the answers of your parents, your priest, or your ruler. Today, we question everything. We want answers, we want proof, we want guarantees, Signed, sealed, and delivered. We want social media and news media and the politicians and our neighbors to accept whatever it is we have come to accept. And we're more skeptical and challenged than ever before as a result. Belief isn't something that we get on demand or are necessarily born with. We study religions of the world at university, and more questions are unleashed. We talk to our neighbors and join in their festivals and eat with them on their feast days, because that is one way we can learn and perhaps come together. But there are so many more religions and leaders and customs that seem to alienate, and one wonders why God doesn't organize all this into comprehensibility. But it's we humans who took on the challenge of understanding and deciding and dividing, so it's up to us to fix it. One thing we can take comfort in is that the Creator must be understanding and forgiving, or the story would have ended before it had really begun. And for now, that's about all the satisfaction I can provide. But the chase has its own rewards in living and learning and growing. So challenge and care, question and seek answers. It all goes to seeking the path to knowing good and bad and choosing good for all the right reasons in our nows and our evermores. So may it be. Amen. The search engines of the internet are the delight of my life. I have so many questions, and I go on the hunt online and spend hours seeing how far I can go in discovering how others have answered those questions. And then I set to polishing and seeking my own satisfactions in answers uniquely my own. I hope that you, too, enjoy the chase.